If you're watching this video, chances are you have a pile of these that you use to edit your projects and even archive them. That was me a few months ago, but I was so tired of sifting through these, trying to move data between these to make enough room, or if I needed to find footage from a bunch of different projects, I literally have this bag here just full of all of these hard drives, they're all over the place, and I'd have to plug it into a bunch of different USB ports and just literally would have no more USB ports available to just find footage from these different hard drives, which is obviously not an ideal workflow. It's super clunky and just makes your desk look like an absolute mess. Not only that, I have an M1 Max MacBook Pro with a 4TB internal SSD, and that was fully maxed out. So no matter what, I had like fully maxed out hard drives, and either internal to my computer or these right here. It got to the point where I needed a more professional and robust storage solution. So earlier this year, I posted to my stories and just asked, what storage solution are you using? And to my surprise, the most common response was, hey, let me know what you find out because I need a solution as well. So this video is my answer to that. And so I did a lot of research, and I just wrote down the things that were important to me for a professional storage solution. And so in doing that, I landed on 5 things that were really important to me. I wanted it to be high capacity. I wanted it to be fast. I wanted there to be redundancy. I wanted there to be simplicity in it. I didn't want to have a computer science degree to figure this out. And the 5th thing is I wanted remote access. And that was more of a want at the time than a need, but that has changed, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Now with that list in hand, I did my research, and I didn't really know anything about this before starting this journey. So I found out I needed a NAS, which NAS, it stands for Network Attached Storage, which essentially, in layman's terms, it's basically a hard drive that connects to the internet, giving you the ability to access it remotely, which, if you remember, that was number 5 on my list. And in doing that research, I landed on the Synology DS1821 Plus, which is an 8-bay NAS enclosure. Now, remember earlier I mentioned I got all those responses with people basically saying, hey, let me know what you find out. Well, I thought this would be a really cool opportunity to pitch this idea to Synology that, hey, my audience is really looking for a storage solution. Any interest in partnering? And they were kind enough to partner with me and send out the DS1821 Plus enclosure, as well as a 10 gigabit Ethernet expansion card. So thank you so much, Synology, for sending that out. And sorry if you can hear drums in the background. That is my toddler drumming away on his toy drums, and that is one of the joys of having a home office and working from home. Okay, so why do I think this is the best solution for me? Well, the 1821 Plus really checks all the boxes for me, and then some. There's some other great things that I'm probably not going to get into in this video, but there's a ton of content on YouTube about Synology NASs anyways. But it checks those 5 boxes, so I want to go into a little bit more detail about that. And the first thing is having a high capacity storage solution. Well, the DS1821 Plus, as I mentioned, is an 8-bay enclosure. So what I've done is I've filled it with 8 16TB hard drives, giving me a little over 87 terabytes of available storage. And if that math doesn't make sense to you, then I'll explain that here in just a little bit why that doesn't equal to 128 terabytes. But just starting out, 87 terabytes is plenty. I have basically offloaded all of my drives and everything, and now I have about 50 terabytes left of available storage, which is amazing. Now, Synology makes their own hard drives, which they're pretty cool because you can actually update the firmware to the hard drives, which never knew that was a thing, but hard drives have firmware, so you can actually update it with that. But the 1821 Plus is really cool because it's not limited to just their hard drives. You can use a whole host of other hard drives. So what I ended up doing is I ended up getting Seagate Exos drives, 16 terabyte Exos drives, and really just because B&H had a crazy good sale going on them, and that's why I picked those up. Now initially I bought 5, which is the cool thing about this NAS is you can add to it. So initially I bought 5 hard drives with the thought of, maybe in the next couple months I'll add one as I need. But then I just decided I'm just gonna go ahead and just buy 3 more and fill it up. Now B&H ran out of stock of those Exos drives, so I bought some Iron Wolf Pro drives, and they are working just fine. So even though I have different hard drives, the specs are pretty similar to where I've not noticed any kind of performance hit or anything like that. Now earlier I mentioned the math wasn't quite mathing when I said I got 8 16 terabyte hard drives, but I only had 87 terabytes of available storage. Well, that's because it is set up in a RAID array, and I'm actually using Synology's proprietary RAID setup called SHR2. Now they have 2 versions, at least at the time of recording this. They have SHR and SHR2. SHR gives you basically a 1 drive fault tolerance, so 1 drive can fail, you can pull that out, put a new one in, and it'll rebuild itself. With SHR2, it gives you a 2 drive redundancy, and basically I just wanted to be much safer. This has got really important client work on there, so I just don't want to take the chance. I just want to be as safe as possible. So I decided to go with a 2 drive fault tolerance, and SHR is pretty cool too, because you can actually mix and match different capacity hard drives. So you could put like an 18 terabyte drive and a 16 terabyte drive next to each other, or whatever you decide to go with. I decided to go with all 16 terabytes drives just to keep consistency. Now this NAS comes with 1 gigabit Ethernet ports, which really isn't that fast. It's actually really slow for transferring data, large amounts of data, like for video editing and even editing off of. It's just, you can't edit 4K video or anything like that from 1 gigabit Ethernet ports. But there is a PCIe expansion port on the 1821 Plus that you can add a card to it to add basically a 10 gigabit Ethernet port using that PCIe expansion slot. And when you do that, you can get up to 1250 megabytes per second of transfer, so much faster than the 125 megabytes per second that you'd get with 1 gigabit Ethernet. In real world practice, I can actually edit 4K videos. I'm editing this video right now off of my server, and I've edited pretty much every one of my YouTube videos straight from my server, just because I offload everything straight to the server, and I'm usually working here at my workstation. So I've had no problems, and I've actually done some client work, some reels and stuff straight from the server, and I've even had like 8K raw footage from my R5 Mark II that I'm recording on, and I was able to actually edit that no problem straight from the server, which is pretty cool. Saves up hard drive space on my internal drive or a working drive. But usually for client work, I still edit off of these little SSDs right here, simply because I'm not always editing right here at my desk. So what I'll do is I'll use something like Offshoot, and I will offload the footage to my server and make the same copy to this drive right here, a drive like this. That way I can edit off of this drive the whole time and not have an interruption to my editing workflow if I'm editing, maybe I have an on-site meeting in town. Maybe I'll just finish editing a project while I'm down there, or whatever the case may be, or if I'm traveling. So I'd still like to edit off of these, because that part of the workflow still is fine for me. And then when I'm done, this kind of just becomes an archive, but I still have all the data to access on my server if I need to. And if there is some sort of re-edit that needs to happen, or a different delivery format or resolution, then I can just open up the project from my server, relink the files really easy and resolve, and export it from there, which not a big problem. Now I also wanted something that I did not need a computer science degree to figure out how to connect. One of the reasons why I go with a MacBook and just configure it off the website is because I don't want to spend the time building something out. That's why I didn't go make a custom server or anything like that. You can do that, and I'm sure it's great, but I don't have the time for that, and I don't want to put the energy towards figuring something out. So I wanted something that was really easy to figure out, and there were enough resources out there that I didn't have to hire somebody to come out and get this set up for me. And this was really easy. Now there is some hardware that you need to get, and that's why I'm kind of making this video, to basically make a video for my past self trying to figure this stuff out. But essentially, from a hardware perspective, this is like where the most confusing thing for me was. You need the NAS, obviously. You need some Cat6a cables, which probably will be the cheapest thing in this whole build. You need a network switch, and that's going to, with 10 gigabit Ethernet ports, and that's gonna allow you to take advantage of the 10 gigabit Ethernet speeds. If you get the 1821 Plus, you're gonna need the 10 gigabit Ethernet expansion port, for expansion thing for the PCI port. A way to connect 10 gigabit Ethernet to your computer. I'll talk about what I have here in a second. And then access to your modem. So this little chart hopefully should give you some reference on how things go. But essentially the network switch, don't really know why it's called a network switch, but it's like an Ethernet hub, if you will. And the Ethernet, the switch that I got has two 10 gigabit Ethernet ports on it, and then a handful of, I think, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports, or maybe 1 gigabit Ethernet, I can't remember. But essentially that's kind of your Ethernet hub. And so from there, that kind of connects to all of the different things. So the 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, I think it's 2.5, that one goes to my modem. I have AT&T fiber, so I just plugged it into the port at the bottom. That's what the AT&T dude said to use for something like this. So that's what I ran to that one. And then the two 10 gigabit Ethernet ports on the switch are used to connect your NAS and your computer. So you don't actually hook your computer directly up to the NAS. You use that switch as kind of a bridge between the two. So from one port on the switch, I know this is confusing, but from one port on the switch, it goes to the 10 gigabit Ethernet port on the NAS. So you got 10 gig to 10 gig. And then in my case, what I've done is I've gotten an OWC Thunderbolt dock that has a 10 gigabit Ethernet port on the back. And so that second 10 gigabit Ethernet port on the switch goes to the Ethernet port on the dock. Now you can get like just a Thunderbolt to Ethernet port adapter if you wanna, if you already have a dock solution, or if you have something like a computer, like a Mac Studio or something that has 10 gigabit Ethernet on it already, then you don't need that extra piece of hardware. But for me, since I'm on a MacBook Pro, I need that 10 gigabit Ethernet port on something. So I decided to go with a Thunderbolt Pro dock. That way I could plug in all kinds of different peripherals and use my reference monitor, and even has a CF Express B slot on there, which is cool. So yeah, so that's what I went. So again, that network switch is kind of like where everything meets, and it just kind of goes off to different things, goes off to the modem. That's how you're able to connect to the internet and access it remotely, and then obviously to the computer and to the NAS. Super confusing, but hopefully that chart or that little diagram really helps you kind of visualize it in a way that is easier for me to visualize than explain it. So that's kind of all the hardware. And then the next thing is the software, how to actually get it all up and running and connected and everything. And I'm just gonna leave you a couple resources down below that really help me get it set up. One is, I think, Hudson Henry Photography. It's an amazing resource. And another one is a channel called Space Rex, who seems to be like the most knowledgeable YouTube channel on Synology NASs. There's a couple of other ones, but those two were really helpful for me to set up, and they certainly deserve the credit because I definitely wouldn't have made it past getting all the hardware without the help of their videos. So instead of me trying to explain how to set it up, just go watch those videos and you will be good to go. Now earlier I mentioned that network switch and one of the ports being connected to the modem. And why that's really important is because that's how it connects the NAS to the internet and really becomes your own personal server and gives you the ability to access it remotely. And that was one of the things that was on my checklist. That was the last thing on my checklist. And initially it was just a want. I said, that'd be kind of cool to have, but I don't know that I really need that. Looking back, I was totally wrong. It is not a want, it's an absolute need at this point. I've used it a number of times, like in on-site client meetings where we're reviewing things or whatever. I can pull up scripts or storyboards or any kind of other document or file that we might have been working on, and I could just leave that on my server and connect it to it remotely, which is really cool. I've had clients reach out and say, like, when I'm traveling, like, hey, can you resend me that photo? I don't know where it went. Can you just resend that to me? I can just access my server remotely using Synology Drive and download it or send them a link or whatever the case may be, and not have to worry about, like, oh gosh, I don't have that hard drive with me and I can't send that to them. And then other little things, like a lot of times, if I'm on set, I'll try to get some quick BTS with my phone, and it records in ProRes because I like to do that to myself. And so as soon as I get that and I get home, instead of connecting my phone to my computer or anything, I'll just actually upload it directly to my server, usually on my Wi-Fi network, because my upload speeds are really fast with AT&T fiber. And it's just cool that I don't have to connect the phone at all. I can just do that all remotely, or all, just over Wi-Fi. And even just being able to access files on my server to view them without being on the computer, especially if I'm like want to review a client video, and especially if it's like a story video or something, like a reel, I want to view it on my phone. Instead of airdropping it to my phone, I'll just save it. I export it directly to my server from DaVinci Resolve, and then I can just open it up on my phone and just watch it on my phone like that, which is really cool. So that is the 1821 Plus. I think it's a fantastic server. It has really served my needs quite well. And Synology was really cool when I pitched this idea to them a couple of months ago. I asked them, like, hey, can I just use this for a couple of months, iron all the kinks out, figure this thing out so I can be a little bit more confident when I make this review? And they said, absolutely. And what was cool in that time was I was actually in a different rented office. And since then, I've moved from that rented office space into my home office, and I had the server there, and it was really easy to transition it over here. And when I tell you, I am not a real like computer science-y person, like this stuff is still kind of goes over my head and I can figure it out, anybody can figure it out. So super cool there. But one thing to know is this is not a backup solution. This is a storage solution. So you still want to follow the 3-2-1 rule. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but it's essentially having your data in 3 different devices. You have it in your NAS, and then an external device, something like this, and then ideally offsite. Whether it's a physical server that you store at a relative's house, or even using a cloud solution like Synology's own C2. That's another option to back up your stuff on the cloud. So I'm not going to get into all that in this video because this video is certainly long enough, but it's really important to not just have everything saved onto one storage device, even though there is fault tolerance and all that. Still, if like this house burns down, God forbid, I would lose everything if I didn't have it stored separately. So that's all I'll say on that. That's pretty much this video. I really made this video for basically me 6 months ago when I was researching this stuff, trying to figure out what to do. And if this video makes it up on the internet, then it would have been helpful to me in the past. So I hope it is helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will answer them as best as I can, but I'm not a professional network guru, so my answers may not be as in-depth as you may like, and I would just highly recommend going over to like the Space Strength channel or something, or NAS Compares or something. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.